Those of you! By Black K Cat. Chapter 2. I saw you in the curve of the moon. Of the two of them, Ikkaku was the first to notice that something strange was going on, which, well, the only other option is Renji noticing first, and even Ikkaku likes to think he's a bit sharper than that. It starts when he notices one of the new recruits messing up a basic Zanjutsu sequence he knows Yumichika drilled into them all last week. Snorting, he turns around to tell Yumi a sharp comment on the intelligence of this new batch on the tip of his tongue. But Yumichika isn't there. The spot at Ikkaku's shoulder where he normally stands is empty, and there's not even the faintest trace of that lilac shampoo he uses in the air. Ikkaku closes his mouth and frowns. Something wrong, Ikkaku. The captain drawls, sweeping past with Yachiru on his shoulder. You look like you just misplaced your brain. That's actually rather more accurate than Ikkaku cares to admit. He lets his frown deepen, thinking back on the morning, and can't recall seeing Yumichika at any point today. And last night, he ducked out on their drinking session early, claiming prior engagements. If that had been the truth, their engagements Ikkaku is entirely unaware of, and that's unsettling. Not that they live in each other's pockets, but well, there's a certain level of codependency there, and has been since they were brats growing up together in the Rukongai. That he hasn't even noticed Yumichika's absence until now is a testament to that. You haven't seen Yumichika this morning, have you, Captain? He asks, glancing around because he half expects Yumi to come wandering around the corner at any moment, deep in discussion with Rengiku or someone equally fashion-conscious. Zaraki pauses and gives him a strange look. Pretty boys over at the 5th, he says after a long moment. Kurosaki wanted his help with lieutenant work. Seems like the pansies over there won't take the position. Thinks it's cursed or something. Asagawa offered to help. Ikkaku feels his heart thud hollowly against his breastbone. Yumichika hadn't mentioned anything about that to him, and he's usually first in line to know when Yumichika is satisfied or excited or in a mood to complain. But he starts helplessly, and then forces himself to stop as a horrifying thought occurs to him. Yumi's strong. He's been 5th seat as long as Ikkaku's been 3rd seat, and everyone knows he might as well be 4th. What with how no one can beat him to take 4th in the first place. What if he's finally decided he wants to move up in the ranks? The 11th doesn't have any room for promotion, and Ikkaku knows that Yumichika would never challenge him, Zaraki, or Yachiru for the places. That means his only option is a cross-division transfer, and from the sound of it, Kurosaki's more than happy to have him in the 5th. Ikkaku's fond of Ichigo. Kid's a fighter and hella powerful. But if he's even contemplating luring Yumichika away from the 11th, Ikkaku will beat his ass so hard, he'll never sit down again. Zaraki is still watching him, narrowed eyes sharp. When Ikkaku looks up, only belatedly realizing that his Reiatsu is thrashing against his control and his hands are clenched into fists, the captain starts. Get lost, he orders. Find the ferry and make sure he remembers he's still a part of this division, yeah? I can't keep Yachiru away from the paperwork much longer. Kanchan! The lieutenant objects. I was making it pretty! Yuichi likes pretty things! Zaraki's snort says quite clearly what he thinks of Yumichika's preferences. Either that or he's imagining the 5th seat's reaction to his newly decorated paperwork. Yeah. Out of my sight, Madarame. Ikkaku is very familiar with that tone, so he makes tracks for the 5th division, even as his thoughts spin with confusion. Yumi's never mentioned being unhappy with the 11th, and he sure as hell still likes to fight. So Ikkaku can't figure out what the problem could be. Then again, people and their motivations have always been Yumichika's area of experience. Ikkaku would rather hit first, hit later, and then ask questions about motivation and crap like that after all the bad guys are whimpering on the ground. But when he reaches the 5th division, it's to find that he's not alone in his confusion. Renji's standing in the doorway of the office, looming over an entirely unimpressed 6th seat. Out! The lieutenant demands, "What the hell do you mean, out? I don't know if you've noticed, but the idiot's been freaking married to this division since he first put on the Hiyori. I've seen him outside the office on personal business maybe 4 times in the last month." The 6th seat is a skinny, wiry woman who looks like Renji could break her in half with 2 fingers and a sneeze, but she nevertheless fixes the redhead with a glare cool enough to give someone frostbite. "I'll thank you to mind how you address our captain, Lieutenant Abare," she says icily. "And I meant what I said. Captain Kurosaki and 5th seat Ayasagawa are out attending to personal matters and will be back after lunch. You are welcome to return then." Her tone really doesn't sound all that welcoming. With a huff, Renji spins on his heel and stops past Ikkaku, who debates his options for half a second before following the lieutenant. Renji spares him half a glance and mutters, "Last year's too, then." Ikkaku grunts an affirmative, pausing to look down the street in both directions. "Which way?" he asks, because like hell he's going to give up before he gets some straight answers out of Yumichika. Renji pauses as well, closing his eyes. Ikkaku doesn't interrupt because Renji's been training under Captain Kuchiki and is doubtless far more attuned to Ryatsu than him. He'll find them faster. And indeed, Renji opens his eyes after only a few heartbeats and turns left, stalking down the street. "Training ground 9, he says shortly, and flickers away in a burst of shunbo, the 3rd seat half a step behind him. Training ground 9 is something of a rarity within the Seireitei's walls. An open and grassy field that's easily the size of a barracks, left to nature and allowed to grow wild as long as it keeps to its borders. The result is beautiful. Hills of green gold grass amongst the white stone of the city, running right up to the wall and pristine in the way that only wilderness can be." Ikkaku lands next to Renji, who glances over at him. The 3rd seat is tight-lipped and looks vaguely unsettled, and Renji expects that's very much a reflection of how he himself appears. It's jarring, almost, to seek Ichigo out and find him gone, to find him with someone else. Ever since Ichigo's promotion, they've been nigh on inseparable, attached at the hip whenever Renji can manage to pry Ichigo out of his division. But he hasn't heard anything about a friendship with Yumichika. Not a word. And that's not upsetting, maybe, but the next best thing. And then he steps around the curve of a hill and freezes, nearly upsetting, quickly metamorphosing into enraging. Because from this position, he's got a perfect view of the pair stretched out on the grass. Yumichika's the first one he notices, sitting up with his legs crossed. His top is off, skin and muscles shining sweat slick in the morning light, and Zanpakuto sheathed on the ground beside him. That's not what has Renji's blood burning, though. No, that honor falls to the other man, to Ichigo, who's flat on his back, kosode on but undone, so it falls to frame his leanly muscled body, head resting squarely in Yumichika's lap. Yumichika keeps dragging his fingers into Ichigo's brilliant orange hair, sliding them through slightly overlong locks turned dark with sweat, and then gliding them down over the smooth skin of his throat, the obscene curve of his bared shoulder. Renji doesn't think he's ever hated anyone more than he does Ayasagawa Yumichika at that moment. He wants so badly, and Ichigo has never once showed any sign of wanting him in return. For all that the 5th captain is called a hothead, he can be absolutely inscrutable sometimes, and Renji's never picked up so much as a hint of interest in the other man that goes beyond the bounds of friendship. Renji himself has always been a coward when it comes to making the first move. He was with Rukia right up to the point that he was firmly placed into the zone of friends. He was with Izuru back at the academy after Rukia left. And since then, right up until that rainy day, even in the human world that he met Ichigo, his only thought was for advancing, for getting better as quickly as possible. And now he will not let it be the same. Before he can even think to stop himself, Renji snarls low in his throat and strides forward. He doesn't grab for Ichigo, much as he wants to seize that deceptively delicate wrist and drag the captain to his feet to use his greater height and mass to drag Ichigo away where Yumichika can never touch him again. Instead, he picks up Zangetsu and growls, "We need to talk, Ichigo." Doesn't even bother to wait for a response as he stalks away back towards the winding roads around the training ground. There's a startled yelp and a shout behind him, a hurried, "Sorry, Yumichika, later." That makes his blood simply burn hotter with rage, and then a quick time set of footsteps trailing him. When Ichigo catches up, there's an annoyed scowl on his face, and he's pulling his top closed as he glares at his friend. "What the hell, Renji? I get maybe an hour off in the middle of the day, and you're going to make me run around the freaking Seireitei?" It's on the tip of Renji's tongue to make a scathing comment about quickies where anyone can see, but instead, his temper snaps with a nearly audible crack. He drops Zangetsu, whirls around to grab Ichigo's shoulders, and all but throws Ichigo against the white stone of the wall. "Fuck you, Ichigo," he spits. "So you fuck someone who you barely even know, but it never once occurs to you to ask me." Ichigo's features, fine, elegant, almost on the edge of feminine where he takes after his mother. And fuck, but Renji can see why Yumichika, with the highest standards in the Seireitei, took him to bed, twist with confusion, and he asks, "To ask you if I can fuck Yumichika?" Renji snarls deep and animalistic, aching and angry, and answers that in the best way he knows how. He lunges forward, slamming his whole body right up against Ichigo's and fastening their mouths together. It's hot and wet and desperate, Ichigo coming alive under his hands, and the kiss is just as much a fight, a competition, as anything else between them. Ichigo pushes and Renji pushes back, uses his size to his best advantage, and burns with want and frustration and jealousy, because it's one thing to watch Rukia pine after Cayenne, but it's another entirely to watch Ichigo sit there and lounge in another man's lap. Then there's a hand on his chest shoving him back, and Ichigo growls, "What the heck, Renji? You never noticed." Renji spits back, anger overcoming sense. "If I had ever thought you were interested, I'd have had you face down over your desk the first day you were legal. Hell, I'd have shanghaied all your stuff and moved you into my apartment that day, bastard, and you never looked." "You idiot!" Ichigo sounds entirely fed up. "Moronic, baboon-faced monkey brain! You never noticed either!" Well, that's... Renji's brain short circuits just a little bit, but that's just fine. He dives back in for another kiss, regardless.